Welcome to Kino Society with Owen Shapiro. Today on Kino Society, we have Jamison Newlander, who is best known for playing Alan Frog, one of the two vampire-hunting brothers in The Lost Boys from 1987, alongside Corey Feldman. After this, a couple of years later, he went to get a BFA in acting at NYU and acted on stages in New York, Vermont, Kentucky, and California throughout his 20s. While doing theater, Newlander began writing and became an award-winning playwright with his 1996 play Remember This at Actors Theater of Louisville. We are talking with a true legend right here. Hi, Jamison. So, Jamison, I'm curious, as a kid, did you ever dream about becoming an actor at such a young age, or did this opportunity come up unexpectedly?
So it's complicated. I mean, I think that I think definitely I was a performer since I was a little kid, and I think that that's really what propelled me in that direction because my mom noticed it, and we were in LA, and so she just thought, hey, I mean, I don't know what exactly she thought, but she thought, hey, here's an opportunity. Here's a kid who I was a bit awkward for a little while, but then coming into teenage years, kind of began to look like this all-American kid. And so those two things combined. So there was both opportunity and also drive.
So can you tell us a little bit about your past before embodying the character of Alan Frog?
Yeah. So, I hadn't been acting for too long. I started out, I wasn't a kid actor like the Corey Feldman or a bunch of the kids that I ended up working with. I didn't start then. I was just kind of a regular kid at that point. I went to school. It wasn't until, in seventh and eighth grade, I performed, I was like the star, the spring sing, at middle school and that sort of thing. But for the most part, I was a student and just had interests like that. And, I think I had a happy childhood. I, revisit that constantly because was also a lot of strife. My parents were divorced when I was 3. And we had a really rough kind of custody battle for a while when I was a kid. And then I wore leg braces for 2.5 years when I was a kid. I had a little bone disease that, wasn't like you can correct it with wearing a brace. So I did. And so, it was like a bit tumultuous. So it was a good childhood, I think. And then started acting about age 14. And then I got Lost Boys when I was 16.
Right, so obviously you started out in the film industry at a very young age. How was that experience for you? And did you find it weird or did you absolutely love it?
So it's a complex answer, especially since, maybe if you would have asked me 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, I might have said, hey, it was just amazing. And because it was, in a lot of ways, it was amazing. There was a lot of worry and stress on my part as I've sort of unraveled it in my adult life, because wanting to get that next job, and all of a sudden, as a teenager, thinking of these things, thinking of being out of work, or rather than just being a regular kid. So there were some disadvantages to that, and other kinds of disadvantages throughout my adult life. Not disadvantages, but there were trying to make it as an actor as an adult. There were some challenges, like I was operating as a child. I was still, when I would audition and things like that, I thought of myself as a teenager for many years. You know what I mean? So it's complex, and it was really amazing in a lot of ways, and had its challenges too.
So, as your typical routine, what was your typical routine as a young actor when entering the Lost Boys film set?
So, because I was young and I was trying to figure out who I was and what kind of actor I was and things like that, it's not like I had a technique down, like, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'll do voice exercises. I didn't know anything about voice exercises. And, my routine really was, it's important, as a teenager, it's important to be able to come on set and really be a pro, and at the same time not lose your teenagerness. So I think that there's a bit of that, trying to get that balance, trying to come to the set, fully rested, fully prepared, knowing your lines down well is important an important part of acting on film, because you get a curveball in the middle of a scene, and if you don't know your lines that well, then you're going to go up on your lines, and then everybody's, like, oh, we got to go back to the beginning. I mean, not always, but that happens a lot, that people forget their lines. But that's a big part of it. Just being prepared, knowing my character, thinking about it, remembering to have fun. That's a big part of the beginning. It's like that, being a pro and also being a teenager. It's like you got to remember to have fun, and that's what people want to see on screen.
What were some more of the challenges that you encountered when acting at such a young age?
So let's see. There are a few things. Like number one, that I wasn't on the football team. I wasn't. I didn't. I liked water polo a lot, and I would have loved to have done that, but I didn't. My after schools were going on auditions, which was incredible. I was grateful to be able to do that, but I missed out on some of the things you get to do as a kid. And so there's that, and then there's also the factor that people, with me, and again, these are ongoing, like, things that I'm unraveling as I'm looking at different things, and about my early career, was like, people tended to look at me like I knew what I was doing. And I really didn't. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was a teenager, and Corey Feldman may know what he was doing, because he had a whole team around him who was making money off of him since they were 3. And Corey Haim, same kind of thing. They were making big money off him. He had a team around him. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I had to figure it out, while people seemed to think that I did know what I was doing. So that kind of thing can be a challenge.
So, how do you feel when you were called back to do the second and then the third of the movie of Lost Boys?
From the beginning, they were talking about doing a sequel. I remember meeting with Joel Schumacher, director, and he this was in like 1988 or something, and he was like, "Oh, we got it! I just had a meeting. It was great. We're going to bring back the Frog Brothers and stuff." So I was really excited to do that. Then, there was a lot of time that passed, then between the time when it might have been a great idea to do a sequel, until they eventually did do a sequel, which was 2007, I think, maybe, was the Lost Boys 2, The Tribe. And then I think, and then Lost Boys 3 was 2009 or 2010, something like that. So, a full, what is that, 20 years later. I think that I was thrilled to do it. I wish that they had made it a big movie. They kind of backed into it in certain ways. Certainly the second one, the first sequel, they backed into it. And I mean, that's my term, backed into it. I mean, they didn't build what I think, building on the assets of the original, which was, the original cast, and they kind of missed that opportunity. I like what they did with the second movie. I like how they added a new group of vampires. I just think that anyway, it was a second movie was a little bit, I think, unfocused from the point of view of the franchise. And that was a bit frustrating, because here we had all this momentum, and then we kind of lost it. And then by the time we got to Lost Boys 3, the fans had said, they had done their research. The Warner Brothers had done the research to find that the fans really do want the original characters back. And they loved Feldman in the second one, or the diehard fans really loved Feldman in the second one. And so it made sense for the Frog Brothers to come back, and it was great to come back, and it was awesome to come back to work with Feldman and be the Frog Brothers again, because we have a certain kind of chemistry. Whenever we get together, we have this kind of chemistry, this sort of brotherly chemistry, and that was really great. And it was great to advance the Frog Brothers, in the franchise and all that. So it was really great in those ways. And it was also, I went to South Africa. We shot the whole thing in South Africa, which was really cool. I had a 1-year-old kid. My son, who's 12 now, was 1. And it was just, really cool to do that. 6 weeks we went over there, the whole family, me and my wife and Nathan. And we, so it was really great to do it. Again, I wish it kind of came sooner and it was bigger. We're still trying to do something with Frog Brothers. So we'll see. But it was great to do it. I was thrilled to do it.
Was the third one Schumacher as well?
It wasn't. It's actually second and third one were not Schumacher. He was, he had to sign off, I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure he owns the part of the franchise. But Yeah, he didn't do the second or third one.
Yeah, because if he did, that would be a bit tricky now. Since I think he might have died recently.
Yeah, he just died last month, I think it was. It could be longer ago than that because time is going in this bizarre way during with all of us being at
Exactly.
home, you know.
All right. What were the differences you encountered when working as an actor for these three movies?
Cool. Okay, so there were a bunch of differences. The first movie, I mean, doing the first movie, it was a big movie. It was, it wasn't like a huge thing where they were spending. It wasn't like they broke any records on what they spent on it. They did it, I think, fairly inexpensively for a movie at the time. But it was a big movie in the sense that really everybody in town knew about it, knew what was going on. They got the top, like, Jason Patrick and Kiefer and Jamie Gertz. They had their pick of the top people, and so it was a pretty big deal, and I was kind of one piece of a bigger picture, and I was pretty young, and so it was like true. I guess that first movie was kind of like true Hollywood. It was the '80s. It was like a very Hollywood popcorn movie, and it was exciting. But I was also new. I was 16, and I had been doing parts here and there, so it was like it was a new experience for me to be a lead on a big movie like that. So that was its own thing. And then the second movie, because I really only had a very small part in the second movie. The second movie was like this. They said, we're going to do this. They started to shoot, and they're like, there's going to be a role for you. We're trying to work it out. And so little by little, they had expanded Corey Feldman's role in the second one, and they were ready to, and they were like, okay, let's get Jamison in here. Let's try and get the Frog Brothers together. And it ended up in the special features. So it wasn't a successful. It was just one day I did on the second movie, and it was exciting to be back. It was exciting to like look at a call sheet and see Lost Boys on it, and especially after all this anticipation of being like, every year being like, we're gonna do a sequel, that was one thing. And then by the time the third movie came out, the second movie did really well. It did really well on, it was just direct to DVD, but it did really well on DVD. And so they were excited. People were excited again about the third movie and about getting the Frog Brothers together and going to South Africa. We Cape Town for 6 months. I don't know if you've ever been to Cape Town, but it's a beautiful city. And I was there with, Feldman and, with Hani, my wife, and my 1-year-old son. And it was like just really wild being all of a sudden, involved in Lost Boys again on this shoot, a working actor. Basically, I worked here and there, but I wasn't really a working actor, that whole time. So, all very different things. I was in very different places in my life, very different types of productions. And I mean, in terms of I don't want to go too off on the terms of the quality of the pieces. I just feel like, a movie like Lost Boys, you're not going to get that first. You're not going to get that lightning in a bottle they had, with Lost. I should say that we had with Lost Boys 1. Schumacher had this vision for it. 2 and 3, I think, are nice movies, nice little movies. You can't really, I think, compare it to the original. I don't know if you feel that way or.
No, it's very understandable.
Yeah. Right.
They're direct to DVD sequels. What do you expect of that?
Yeah, exactly.
So after The Lost Boys, your career clearly launched, but tell us how you switched to theater and directing. Where did that come from?
So, again, it's one of those things I'm still sort of unraveling exactly how it happened. I had a lot of different things I could do as a kid. I was an honor student, and then I became an actor, and then I was, acting is a really intense profession. And it was a little much for me, the thing, that you got to go in all the time and basically beg for a role. Just be like, I'll do anything. I'll dance. What do you want me to do? And so I wasn't, as much as I loved acting, and I loved I loved the art of acting, the craft of acting. The pursuing it was really tough. And I thought I would go to New York and maybe get a theater base in it. So I studied theater at NYU, and I did theater in New York, and, regionally, different theaters around the country. And it was great, but it doesn't have the same kind of career longevity. You do it, and there are people who, who build a great stage career. I didn't build a stage career. I did some stuff. I was also had a foot in film, and then I thought, okay, let me try directing, because I was writing and I was acting, and I'd even produced a little bit. I produced a short film, and I was like, you know what, let me just try directing. And so I thought, so I did. I tried directing. I don't like directing. I don't really these days consider myself to be a director. I can, but mostly it's acting and writing. And so theater became this other thing where theater acting is incredible. Anybody who's listening who's an actor can probably understand. I mean, the idea that, the audience is right there and they're reacting to you and tell a joke and the audience could go crazy. I mean, that joy that's something that you can't, you don't get the same kind of feedback on film, as you do from a live audience in theater. So, that's kind of the long and the short of why it is artistically why I went in that direction. Part of it also goes back to the other side of where, people might have thought I knew what I was doing because I was getting these roles, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I didn't know how to build a career in that way. And so my film career kind of stumbled. So all those things were going on at once.
But so tell us a bit of the differences between the film and theater industry.
I think that, when you get into the big time, it's all very similar. You've got people who are putting a lot of money up, in the case of a Broadway show or even an off-Broadway show, or a big movie or something. You have people who put up a lot of money. They want their success, and they're willing, they expect top work. They expect, you to really bring it, everybody to really bring it. And so there's a lot of similarity at the top. When you start getting down into more of the, when you're not at the big time, you're at, you're doing shows, you might be doing shows, you might be doing independent movies, you might land a commercial here or there. It's all very different. Theater, there's just a lot less riding on theater. I mean, at the same time, as I think about it, though, I've been involved in, what I call like garage productions, very independent productions, and independent productions of film are very similar to very independent productions on stage, because everybody's scrambling and everybody's creative, trying to come up with solutions and stuff. So it's hard to say. It's a complex question. I don't think I have a good answer to it, but a lot of similarities, a lot of differences.
Do you have any advice for people who want to make it big in the film industry?
So I do have advice, which I think people should take or leave, because I may feel differently in a year. It's like advice that changes constantly. But what I would say is this. This is an industry about people. I mean, it's about your talent, it's about your craft. Absolutely. You got to be tip top on that. You got to like really push yourself constantly, artistically. But it's a people business. The people who I know who are successful, very successful, they're people who are not just good at networking, but they're people who you want to be around. They're people who you want to go out and have a meal with. They're people who you want to talk to, and that's how a lot of projects happen. Is that there's the business side of it, where you go in and you go on auditions and you go, and you show up and you got to bring your A game and everything. And then there's the kind of soft skills, which is that you want to go out after the shows. You want to go out. You want to go to the rap parties. You want to keep in touch with people, because those are the people that are going to be your colleagues, and support people. Being competitive is fantastic in terms of challenging yourself, but don't be overly competitive with your peers. These people are your network. These people are your support system, and be the support system for them. Go see your friends' plays. Go watch your friends' movies. If your friends are in a film festival, try and get there if you can. That's what I think. Supporting each other, building a community. That's the advice that I feel most strongly about.
But finally, which were some of the movies that currently inspire your work, or that you've watched as a kid and you've always truly loved?
Cool. I love talking about my favorite movies. There are some movies like, first of all, Jaws is one of my favorite movies. And I mean, I'm not a huge, even though I'm in the horror genre, I'm not a huge horror movie, and I don't necessarily consider Jaws, to only be a horror movie. But I think that's a great movie. Um, and those performances, every one of those performances, very Richard Dreyfuss especially was a big influence for me early on. Also, I love the movie Casablanca, which may sound like too like film, like film theory class or whatever.
No, no, I love that movie.
Do you really? Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I've met some people recently who didn't like it, and I was like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you don't like Casablanca. But of course, everybody has their opinions. But I mean, it's different than Citizen Kane, which of course is also a great movie, and they invented so many things, and most of the stuff we do now is based in some way on the inventions they made, during Citizen Kane. But it's not the same kind of movie that I like. I like, Casablanca is a popcorn movie. It's like it's this great movie with this hero and this reluctant hero, who's eventually realizes that he has to step in, and this is just classic movie making. So I love Casablanca. Very, very influenced by Casablanca. There's a movie called Broadcast News in the 80s. I don't know if you know that movie. William Hurt, Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks were the three stars. And I watched that movie. There was a time I would watch it weekly. I would watch it, at least once a week. Part of it is that I had a little crush on Holly Hunter as a kid. I mean, as a teenager. But it's also that the film is. I recommend watching it. It's a beautiful movie about the news industry and how it was changing toward these stars, these anchors who were stars, and how it moved from at least this filmmaker believed that it was moving from journalism to stars, to the star system, and I think it was definitely ahead of its time in that way. The Big Chill is a great movie too. I don't know if you know that one. I guess these are all somewhat at the same time. Pulp Fiction is a big influence for me. I don't know if you're a Tarantino fan.
I've seen his entire filmography, actually.
Yeah, it's understandable as a film buff that you would. It's Pulp Fiction I find to be just incredible, and I still can't quite figure out. Like it successfully threw me the changing of the timeline and all that. If I guess if people don't know the movie, then they won't know. But I just thought it's just a beautiful movie, and I think Tarantino is really a special director. Doesn't always hit it, we can't always be successful every single movie, but
Yeah, I thought that most of his movies were. The only one I downright think that I thought was Death Proof.
I didn't even see that one. I don't know, is it?
Oh,
Did you miss it completely in that?
he didn't miss it completely. It's campy. It's purposefully campy, but I mean, it's not great.
Yeah, that's the thing is, you get. Didn't he? Did I just heard Tarantino said he's like, isn't he only going to make 8 movies or something like that, and now he's done or about to be done. Did you hear this?
I heard he was supposed to only make 10 movies and then retire.
Oh, 10.
Which I hope that's not the case because he is a very good filmmaker.
Yeah, yeah. Reservoir Dogs too, of course. I love that movie. I mean, not of course, but dark movie. But also, I mean, there's a combination of theater and film together. It's a film that easily could have been a play. I even saw it as a play, actually. Reservoir Dames. Friend of mine did it in Hollywood. I'm sure there's a bunch of other movies that are influential. I mean, Robert De Niro was incredibly influential. Dustin Hoffman was. I mean, these were the Pacino. I mean, partly, those guys are kind of on the short side like me, so maybe that's why I like them. But great actors from when I was a kid. People that I looked up to.
Yeah, it's a lot of influences, definitely.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone over your career as an actor, writer, and director, what's next for you? Any upcoming projects?
Yeah, there's this. So there's a little bit of a bump going on right now where, the '80s have been big. They were big. They've been big for a number of years, and eventually that's going to fade. But right now it's still pretty strong, and so there's a big community of '80s actors with Cobra Kai on the Karate Kid thing, and with this kind of the feeling that the Frog Brothers could kind of have their own piece of the franchise that's that's not quite as grand. It's not quite as it's not Lost Boys. It's not it's a smaller, darker show. That's what we're pitching right now. I have a meeting next week to kind of begin to see if it's possible. I wrote a pilot script for it, so we'll see if we can get something like that on the air. There's also a project that I've been working on for a long time. One of my big early writing projects when I was in New York, but really one of the first things I dug into when I was like, okay, you know what, I'm a writer, is a project called The Virtual Adventures of Rifkat Polito. It was a play originally I did in New York, and I wrote it then as a screenplay. It got a little bit of a buzz when I was out here in the early 2000s. It's a virtual adventure, a virtual reality story, a detective, a noir detective in VR. And we're going to be doing an audio version of it. I have a podcast myself. I have a podcast that we did a first season of a couple of years ago called the Jamison, Newlander, and Some Other Guy Show. It was my friend of mine was like, we don't need to know who I am. I'm just some other guy. So and so we're going to do a version of the Rifkat Polito story on there in audio, and then try to build that into something else. A really cool story, something it's been a kind of a pet project for a long time. And there's a bunch of other different things that now that these things are building a little momentum, I'm hoping to bring along some of these other things. I'm acting a bit more now. A few years ago, I booked a few roles. I did a movie called Lone Tomahawk, which was a new writer-director. You know that one?
I've actually heard of it. I have not seen it.
I recommend it if you can deal with very gory things.
Yeah,
I think is that right? It's a great movie. There's some serious gore at a couple points in it. So that and I did a few other roles. So acting's beginning to pick up a little bit more, and we'll see. I kind of feel like there's a bit of a renaissance, what I've been calling it, Jamison, coming up here, where there might be a good opportunity for some more artistic expression out there in the film and theater and TV world from me. It would be great.
Finally, where can my listeners find you and connect with you?
So right now I'm on Twitter. My handle is at Jamison Newland. I couldn't fit the ER when I started the account. Now I probably could, but it was at Jamison Newland. That's the main place I interact with fans. There's a bunch of stuff going on Twitter right now with me and Feldman. We did a kind of a ghost hunting thing, so that's going on. If you come on Twitter and go on the Twitter feed, there's a lot of fun to be had. I'm not yet on Instagram. I've been kind of waiting for my moment to launch onto Instagram, so that'll happen soon. I think Twitter is really the spot. I'm in the middle of building my website, JamisonNewlander.com. There's going to be some good content on that, and also links to wherever you can find me in different ways on there. I'm also doing cameos. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what cameos are. It's an app where you can get a video message from your favorite star, or even somewhat favorite star. So I think that's right now the only places to find me, but I don't mean the only. That's a lot here.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Jamison. That's all for today. Don't forget that you can subscribe to Kino Society on iTunes and Spotify.